So hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about a film that is a almost nearly 30-year follow-up to the last installment of this franchise, and that's the Bill and Ted franchise. So today I'm reviewing Bill and Ted Face the Music. So as you can tell by this case, this is a film I rented from Redbox recently. It technically had a theatrical release, but due to the pandemic in 2020, this film's release was mostly a video on demand kind of release. So you could rent the film for like a full $10, $15 or something crazy like that. So I personally waited until Redbox. I really did like that first Bill and Ted movie back when that first came out. Obviously, I was a little too young at the time to really see it, but I saw it in my adult years. I saw most of the second one, but most of my love for Bill and Ted came from that first one, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's a very fun franchise. It's kind of like Wayne's World. It's definitely two dudes that want to be rock and roll stars. Has a very certain kind of humor. I believe the writers who worked on these films have worked on other comedies as well. So this is kind of like their first milestone comedy movie from back in the day. Um, but here today we're going to talk about Bill and Ted Face the Music. Like I said, this film took almost 30 years to actually get made. There's been rumors of a Bill and Ted 3 for years, and it finally came to light recently in 2020. But in this movie, you guys, kind of like what happened with the release, it happens almost 30 years after the previous one, which would have been Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, the second film from the early 90s, I want to say. And so Bill and Ted are at a point where they're kind of middle aged, they're kind of running out of things to do. They still play at weddings and they still kind of find gigs where they can find them. But for the most part, they kind of fell out over the years. They really haven't made any kind of new songs. They really haven't become the band they were hoping to, the Wild Stallions, I think they're called. They really didn't become the iconic band they were hoping to be. But they're still around, like I said, they're finding gigs every once in a while. So basically, the lifetime opportunity that they have left of this point in their life, they get a intergalactic member from the character that George Carlin played in the first two films. It's basically the adult daughter of the George Carlin character, comes down to Earth in a pod and tells them that she needs Bill and Ted to basically make a song that'll connect the universe once and for all, kind of balance it and save it. And if they don't make this song, basically the whole universe will collapse as we know it. So basically, they're left with this huge task. They really don't have a lot of time to make this song. I think they're only given a certain number of hours to do it, if even that. And so basically, they're running out of inspiration. They really need something to kind of come up with the song that will save everybody. And so the adult daughters kind of remember them telling them that they once time traveled and things like that in this phone booth. And so basically, they get a chance to time travel as well. So to basically help their dads with this really important mission that they have, they go back in time and they track down legendary musicians like Jimi Hendrix and Mozart and all these people from certain points in history that really kind of gave music its name. And basically, they're hoping by tracking down all these people and time traveling back with them, it'll help save their dads, basically make the song that will save everybody. And so this happens over the course of Bill and Ted Face the Music, where they have to find out what exactly they're going to do to get this song made. They even time travel to the future to ask their future selves how to do it, and that kind of has mixed results and things like that. So a lot happens in Bill and Ted, and they really have to make this song to save the universe. So overall, guys, Bill and Ted 3 Face the Music is a lot of fun. It's a very fun movie. It's definitely not meant to be taken seriously. Very much in the spirit of the first film. It really is this goofy, two wannabe rocker guys out on this important mission that they're clearly not intended to do to begin with, but they have to do it, otherwise things are not going to turn out well for them in the future. And I had a blast watching this movie. Had some problems along the way that I'll talk to here in a minute, but for the most part, Bill and Ted Face the Music is a very fun movie. So for my positives and negatives of Bill and Ted Face the Music, it's in the spirit of the first film. So if you liked Excellent Adventure, but let's say you hated Bogus Journey from Bill and Ted, it's definitely in the spirit of that first movie, the one that I really like as well. I've seen chunks of Bill and Ted too. I don't really hate the movie. It's clearly the first film that gave Bill and Ted its name and gave it its kind of its popularity that it has now, and how this third film ultimately happened. So it is in the spirit of that first film. It's funny. They go in history. They use time travel. It's goofy. There's goofy things that happen, and it's in the spirit of the first film. So if you love that first film so much like I do, I think you're going to have a lot of fun with Bill and Ted 3. The adult daughters that they have here, I think one of them is Hugo Weaving's real life niece, and I don't know the other actress, but they basically play their adult daughters. And the decision they did is they could have gone one of two ways. They could have been either the daughters that kind of loathing the dads, they're kind of sick of how they want to be these rock and roll guys, or they could have gone the route where they're like Bill and Ted, they love rock and roll, they love music, and they went the route where they love their dads, they love rock and roll and music. And it's almost like watching a younger version of Bill and Ted from that first movie because they're so identical to their dads. And I really like the two actresses they tracked down for this. Both of them have acting careers before this movie. And like I said, one of them is Hugo Weaving's niece in real life, I think. And I really liked how they played them. And it really was kind of watching like a young Alex Winter and a young Keanu Reeves just because they played those roles so identical to those two actors once playing those roles. And it really was fun to kind of see these older Bill and Ted and kind of this young Bill and Ted who are in the form of adult daughters kind of existing in the same film, and it just made this really fun experience. I also like the depiction of the legendary musicians. They had like Louis Armstrong in there, they had Jimi Hendrix in there, and Mozart. I liked all these actors and actresses they recruited to play these legendary musicians, and how they kind of respond to modern day stuff, and how they respond to getting interested in this band and things like that. So I like how they're depicted in this movie. It's really a lot of fun. And like I said, this is a very funny movie. One really funny bit in this movie I really, really liked. There's actually a scene that takes place in hell. Well, there's actually a couple scenes that take place in hell, but there's a scene where Bill and Ted are trying to track down their adult daughters who accidentally got there. And they're talking to these like factory workers who are like these demonic guys, and they're just kind of these regular guys that show up to work in this factory. And it just was funny to me because it just felt like a modern day go to a factory to find directions and stuff like that, and they happen to be demons instead of people. So I thought certain things like that were funny. It's not, most films and television depict hell as like this terrible place and things like that. And in this movie, it's just kind of this place where people happen to go if they weren't so good in reality and stuff like that, and how these demons are running this factory, and they're just kind of like regular people, but they happen to look like demons and stuff like that. So stuff like that was kind of funny to me in this movie. So it's really, really very funny from beginning to end in this film. I also liked how they handled how the George Carlin torch kind of got passed in this movie. This is the first Bill and Ted film, for obvious reasons, to not have George Carlin in it due to the fact that he passed away quite a bit ago. But he was in those first two Bill and Ted films, and because he played a huge role with making sure he could track down the guys to do important missions and stuff, because they don't have him around anymore, they had to figure out how to do that for this movie. And I like the idea of kind of this adult daughter taking over her dad kind of thing, kind of like how Bill and Ted have an adult daughter now too. I liked how the torch was passed. Kristen Schaal, who's appeared in several comedies, plays the adult daughter of the George Carlin character, and I thought it was very appropriate how the torch got passed down and kind of kept the character of the spirit alive. There's even a hologram of the George Carlin character showing up at one point. I like how the torch was passed, and I liked how Kristen Schaal played her character in this too. This also felt like an 80s and 90s movie. I felt like I was watching something that I probably would have rented from Hollywood Video during the 90s. It has that, even has the Orion Pictures logo before the movie starts. It really kind of does feel like something you would watch from the 80s or 90s. Very positive, not very pessimistic, more so optimistic, and even has like the color vibes and things like that. So I like how this film felt like an 80s and 90s film, and it gives this film a more proper continuation feel for the Bill and Ted films, since those earlier films came out so long ago. For my negatives of Bill and Ted Face the Music, I think first and foremost, I will say I do like the first Bill and Ted film the most. Second one's still kind of the least favorite of the bunch for me. And then this is probably my second favorite Bill and Ted film. But that being said, I think Bill and Ted Face the Music runs the problem of being too short. This is a very short runtime for a movie. I think there's only about an hour and 22 minutes of actual movie, and then the rest is just end credits with an end credit scene as well. So it is a very short film, and as a result, there's things about the plot that I think they could have explored a little bit more. I would have liked to have seen more about what Bill and Ted were doing over the years before this film started. I would have liked to have seen if they were even good father figures at all for their kids. I would have liked to have seen these jobs that they might have taken on over the years that clearly weren't working out, and so they kept going back to the rock and roll gigs. There's a lot of things they could have explored in this before just jumping right into the whole saving the world and saving the universe with a song kind of plot. So it's a great movie. There's a lot of great things in it. It's just a very short experience, and there's just a lot of things they could have done over these past 30 years that would have made the film feel a little bit more worthwhile to me. The final act of the movie has a very hokey final song to it. It's one of those things where you doubt that something like that would save the universe. It kind of happens accidentally too, so that's another thing I didn't like about it. So they do make the song that saves the universe, but how they get there is a little hokey to me. I thought more time could have been spent with modern day Bill and Ted and kind of the non fantasy versions because like I said they do visit like their future selves in this in certain points in time in the story. But there's just certain things like why were they failing at all these jobs so much? What kind of father figures were they to their kids? Clearly they like them and being around them, but how did that come to be and things like that? So there's just more time I thought they could have spent with Bill and Ted in modern day before jumping right into the whole saving the universe thing. It does shorthand a subplot involving them having problems with the wives. I thought that could have been continued a little bit further in this. It does kind of halt it at one point in the story, and they do temporarily go back to it, but it doesn't have the meat on its bones that it needs to really be considered the true subplot of the film that it wants to be. I thought they could have continued that on a little bit more than how they chose to do it. And I thought more time could have been spent on their past failures. That this opening monologue of the film talks about how the band broke up and how they had a hard time finding jobs and all this other stuff. I would have liked to have seen more time spent on kind of their past failures and why they kind of came to be the way they are, and how this opening scene with them at a wedding kind of happened the way it did. I thought that would have added more to the story, and we could have understood more why Bill and Ted were in this phase of their lives and not just kind of jump right into the plot itself. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Bill and Ted Face the Music 8.5 out of 10. I really like this movie a lot. A very good follow up to that first Bill and Ted film. For those who hated Bogus Journey, I think this is the more appropriate sequel for Bill and Ted that it needed. Um, I would be okay with a fourth one. I don't think they're going to make a fourth one due to the box office failure of this movie and with the VOD direction they ended up going with. But still, a great movie. If you love that first Bill and Ted film and need another great funny movie in your life, this is a great follow-up movie. So this is Bill and Ted Face the Music. I give it an 8.5 out of 10.